share on the whole situation on the narrative of people repeating the talking point where they mention that blacks in America who make up 13% commit 50% of violent crimes. Now, I don't mean to be repetitive. I have made this video previously, and I just wanted to add another opinion to it and share some more factors that are not really looked at, that people kind of ignore, because a lot of people who believe in the narrative that blacks are committing most of the violent crimes, a lot of you are, if you say you're not racist, if you're a white person, you say to me that you're not racist, I feel as that you shouldn't be walking around believing that blacks are committing 50% of the violent crimes, because what's happening is a lot of white people who don't interact with black people, who don't have any interaction with black people, the only thing they know about black people from what they see on TV and what they see in movies and stuff like that. I know there's some white people that just don't know too much about black culture, or everything they see about black people is just negative and just stereotypical. So this stems from the reason why a white person will believe that blacks are committing most of the violent crimes, because this helps fulfill their stereotype. This is their perception of what they think about black people. Because what happens is places like Chicago and these inner city areas, what they do is they take that into account and just think that black people are committing super ultra violent crimes. Black people, as I said before in my previous video, if we're going to talk about crime among each other, places like Chicago, New York, Baltimore, yes, there is a high percentage of blacks who commit crimes on each other in these inner city areas. But like I said before, people of the same race who live in the same area that's populated by the same race are going to obviously commit crimes on each other, because people hurt the closest person to them. So the numbers are always going to be the same. Excuse me. Chicago and these other areas, the violence stems from an issue of poverty. Because if you know, it's a direct link between crime and poverty. Whenever you have poverty, you're going to have crime. But this has nothing so much to do with people believing that African Americans, particularly black males, committing more violent crimes. It's just not true. That's just a racist myth that white people believe. And people, if you go on YouTube and you go on Facebook, people actually keep repeating this number, like Ben Shapiro, who's a racist, Jared Taylor, who's a racist. Notice these are people who believe in stuff like this, but they ignore the factors. And I had a conversation with somebody. I remember when I was going to UCC doing college. I had a conversation with my college professor, and we had a big debate about this. And people was on my side because I gave a breakdown in school that African Americans are falsely convicted more at 47%, and we only make up 13% of America. So what happens is, if you're going to let's say black people commit 60% of violent crimes. Let's just say 60%. Okay. Out of that 60%, there's going to be a percentage that's not accurate. It's not going to be accurate because black people go to jail guilty or innocent. Okay? A lot of people, they just ignore this factor. Black people are 7 times more than most likely to be falsely convicted. I don't have a computer right now or a laptop to pull up the numbers. I just have my phone, I don't have my computer. But you can just Google it, look at how many African Americans are falsely convicted each year. I mean, they say from just the past 5 years, there has been over 400 cases of African Americans exonerated of crimes they didn't commit. So that 50% that people are staying, the number changes. It's going to change regardless, because out of that 50%, there's going to be a number of that percentage where a black person has been falsely convicted. Because I know, as a black person, I know a lot of black people who have been prosecuted for crimes they did not do. But what happens is they say 90% of cases don't make it to trial. They just go out to plea bargains, which is true because, like I said before, I don't mean to be repetitive, but black people who come from the inner city in these impoverished areas cannot afford high-priced lawyers. We get bullshit public offenders who tell us to cop out to shit that we didn't do. And it happens all the time because a lot of us don't want to do the 20 years. A lot of us take the 8 years. We take the 12 years. We take the 7 years. And even though we didn't commit the crime, and this is happening all the time, so that number is very questionable. It's going to be questionable. It can't be just 100% accurate. That's what the racists and white people who don't be around black people believe. This is what you believe. You don't talk about the facts. You are ignoring the factors as to black people go to jail more. And you ignore the factors that white people commit the same offenses as African Americans. Okay? This has been proven already. They're committing the same level of offenses. But what's happening is white people get off more. They're going to get off more. They get lesser sentences, and they can receive probation for certain crimes and stuff like that. While black people, we are prosecuted to the full extent of the law. These are facts. People just ignore this. Like, this just doesn't exist. Because, like I said, if you're a white person, especially if you're a racist, this is already your perception of black people. Making crime exclusive to African Americans. Because they just believe that crime is just among blacks. But they don't talk about is black people are targeted more by law enforcement. Okay? The problem we have is, and this is just the truth, you people want to tell there's no systematic racism. Well, it is. Whether you disagree or not, doesn't matter. The problem we have is systematic racism. And I'm not saying that the white guy next door or white people as a group is committing systematic racism, because it's not an individual thing that's being done. So with that being said, the factors to this all that's taking place is systematic racism. Because why are black people only 13%, but we're 7 times most likely to be falsely convicted? Why are black people make up 13% of America, but we see that black people are in jail more for non-violent drug offenses? And this is the truth. Most black people that are in prison today are in jail from non-violent drug offenses. Okay? The war on drugs, we know that it has pretty much criminalized African Americans, and we have been affected by these laws. And we could bring this up, and people will say, well, black people just sell drugs, and there's no such thing as a crimeless community. Right? There's no such thing as just a crimeless society. People, no matter what color, what race, is going to commit crimes. But it is a racist narrative to think that blacks are committing more, because that's what white people love statistics. They love talking about numbers. Oh, you guys, you're committing most of the violent crimes. If black people committing most of the violent crimes, then how come most black people are in jail for non-violent drug offenses? Now, I can get on the computer if I get a chance to and put all the numbers and do the math of white society of committing the same offenses as blacks. They're just getting off more. So white people getting away more for the same crimes as African Americans. One will have to question the numbers that they're given. How do you know black people commit 50% of violent crimes when we see whites who commit the same offenses get off more? You see what I'm saying? They're getting off more for the same things as black people, and that has been proven over and over. I mean, there's so many cases where you can see it's the same judge, same courtroom, same city, same county, and the same that we've seen over and over. The black person who commit the same crime, he can commit a robbery and he'll get 26 years, and the white person would get 4 years. That happens over and over and over because of the systematic racism that exists. And people just say, oh, it doesn't exist. And you have to please help me understand what is the issue. Why are whites getting off more for the same crimes as African Americans? If there's no such thing as systematic racism. This has been proven. You can Google it, you can do the research. This is not something I'm making up. These people who believe this, it comes from a racist narrative. It does. That blacks just commit most of the violent crimes. And it's just simply not true. It's not true because if you look it up, you see most black people are in jail for petty drug offenses. Now, I'm not saying black people don't commit crime or commit large numbers of crime. It's just we don't commit most of the violent crimes that people say that we do. That's just a real bad myth that exists that people love repeating. I mean, and it's only coming from people who don't have no type of interaction with black people, or it comes from a racist-minded person who believes this stuff. Like I said, Ben Shapiro, of course, Richard Spencer, who's an open white supremacist, he has his views, and all white supremacists, if you get them all in the room, all of them believe this idea about black people. That we're committing so much crime. That's a real bad racist myth that exists among them because it helps fulfill the stereotype that they believe. So the numbers are always going to be questionable, like I said. And people might say that, excuse me, people might say I'm being deluded and, you know, I just don't want to accept the truth. But you people ignore, when I did this debate in school, when I had this conversation in school, when I was showing black people going to jail more, my college professor, he couldn't really come up with a counter argument because it's like, well, damn, you know, shit, you got me. You got me. Because black people are going to jail. You know how many black people that's in jail for shit they didn't do? It's a lot. And you can't say, it doesn't matter if you want to say it's, like I said, 60%. You can't say that number is, let's just say, is the criminal justice system got it right. Let's just say they got it right, if that is accurate. But then we find out 10 years later that that person that was convicted in that year under that percentage was falsely convicted. They don't talk about the false convictions. The racists don't talk about that. They just say black people commit most of the violent crimes in America. The guys want to make it 30%, but you commit 50% of the crimes in America. No, black people go to jail more, guilty or innocent. So the numbers that you people are throwing out there is just going to be questionable. And people might say, "Where's my facts?" But everything I'm saying, you can just Google it yourself. You can look up how many black people have been falsely convicted. And you can look at how many whites and blacks are committing the same offenses as each other, but look at the numbers, who's going on, who's being convicted more. Just do the research, and you'll be astounded about the shit that you have been believing about African Americans. Because it's just a lie that one person repeat, the next person repeat it, and then they just say, look at the FBI data, and that's racially biased too in itself, because people can misrepresent statistics based upon their own biased opinion. And that's really just the truth. And that's all I gotta say about this shit. If you want to comment, you can follow on Facebook, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Facebook, every channel. Come on.